The Galactic Council chamber smelled of politics and fear. Joe had been inside the great domed hall of Vethra Station only once before, when she was a junior engineer hauling prototype schematics for Nathan, back when humans were still considered emerging species, Category 3. Now she sat alone at the defendant's table, the only human in a room full of aliens who had decided, collectively, that humanity had gone too far. Celine's voice echoed from the elevated arc of the council seats, cold and precise as a surgical cut. The charges are simple. Earth's Unified Defense Directorate has developed, tested, and deployed a class of weapons the Council explicitly forbade. Gravity compression warheads. Singularity lattice emitters. Tidal cascade devices. She paused. Weapons that do not merely destroy ships, Delegate Joe. They bend space itself to do it. Joe folded her hands on the table. She had Nathan's notes memorized. She had Me's legal briefs. She had New York's astrophysics testimony, Day's historical records, High's material science analyses, and was diplomatic files. She had everything. She said nothing yet. Celine continued. The Covenant of Vethra, signed by 217 species, prohibits any weapon that modifies space-time geometry as its primary destructive mechanism. Earth signed that covenant 41 years ago. And yet. She gestured to the holographic display unfurling behind her. 3 months ago, during the siege of Kareth Station, your military deployed the tidal array. We have the readings. We have the sensor logs. The room murmured. 500 delegates from 500 worlds, and every single one of them had watched the footage. Kareth Station had been under attack by the Vreth Collective, rogue mercenary fleets hired by parties the Council had quietly refused to investigate. 60,000 civilians aboard. No reinforcements within range. And then a human battlecruiser had arrived. And then space had folded. The Vreth fleet, 80 warships, had been compressed into a region of space roughly the size of a city block. Not destroyed exactly. Just contained. The gravitational eddies from the tidal array had looped local spacetime into a closed, recursive bubble. The Vreth ships were still there, technically. They were just traveling through a 6-meter sphere of collapsed metric, forever, experiencing approximately 14,000 years per second from the inside. 60,000 civilians had walked away. Joe finally spoke. Delegate Celine. May I ask who filed the complaint? Celine's membrane eyes narrowed. The complaint was filed jointly by the Vreth Collective's political representatives, the Orati Merchant Guild, and the Vreth Collective, Joe repeated. The same Vreth Collective whose ships attacked a civilian station. The legal standing of the complainants is not the matter before? With respect, Joe said, and she made the phrase sound like a polished blade, it is exactly the matter before us. Because the Council is about to argue that humanity violated the Covenant of Vethra. And I am going to argue that the Covenant of Vethra violated itself first. And then I am going to explain why space agreed with us. The room went very quiet. Me leaned toward her from the human observer's gallery, just a nod. You've got this. Joe stood. The Covenant prohibits weapons that modify space-time geometry as their primary destructive mechanism. She let the phrase hang. I'd like to submit Exhibit 1. It is the full sensor log from Kareth Station, specifically, the gravitational readings for the 6 hours before the tidal array was deployed. The holographic display flickered. Data bloomed across it. New York had spent 3 weeks organizing this. It was beautiful, in the way that a death certificate can be beautiful when it finally tells the truth. The readings showed a massive, sustained gravitational distortion. Not from the human ship. From the Vreth fleet itself. The Vreth Collective Siege Formation Gamma, Joe said, uses synchronized mass drivers and inertial dampeners that, collectively, generate a localized gravitational gradient strong enough to stress the structural integrity of any station within 40 kilometers. Kareth Station was 41.3 kilometers from the perimeter of Formation Gamma. She paused. 1.3 kilometers of margin. For 60,000 people. She let that number breathe. This isn't a new technique. Day, our historian on this matter, traced the Vreth siege formation back 160 years. It's a standard tactic. And in that time, the Orati Merchant Guild has supplied the Vreth Collective with exactly the inertial dampener arrays that make Formation Gamma possible. She looked directly at the Orati representatives. They didn't look away. Species that old had learned to absorb shame without flinching. The Vreth fleet was already using a gravitational weapon. It was just a slow one. One that didn't register on Council sensors because it looked like a navigation system. Celine's voice was careful now. The Covenant does not distinguish between. It does, actually. Joe called up Exhibit 2, High's Material Science Testimony, translated into the 11 primary Council languages. Section 12, Paragraph 4 of the Covenant. Weapons that modify spacetime geometry as their primary destructive mechanism. The Vreth siege formation's primary destructive mechanism is kinetic bombardment. The gravitational gradient is a byproduct. I know. The Council knows. We've just all been pretending otherwise because it was convenient. Someone in the gallery made a sound. Not quite a gasp. Something older. Joe continued. Now. The tidal array. I will not pretend it isn't a gravity weapon. It is. Nathan designed it to be. It uses controlled spacetime curvature as its primary and only mechanism. It is, by any honest reading, in violation of the Covenant's letter. She looked at Celine directly. And it saved 60,000 lives. And here is the part nobody in this room wants to say out loud. She brought up the final exhibit. Wa had filed it under diplomatic records. It was, technically, a routine astrophysics observation report from Council Survey Station Row 7. Submitted 2 weeks after Kareth. Flagged as anomalous. Quietly buried. After the tidal array activated, Joe said, Council instruments recorded something unexpected. The gravitational bubble containing the Vreth fleet was, by all physics, supposed to decay within hours. The recursive metric loop should have collapsed, released the ships, and dispersed. That's what the equations predict. She brought up the decay curves. New York's work again. The bubble had not decayed. It had stabilized. Not through any further human intervention. Not through any device or system humanity had built. The bubble had simply held. The local spacetime geometry had, for reasons that 3 months of Council physics committees had failed to explain, preferred the configuration the tidal array had created. Our best theory, Joe said, and she let herself smile now, just slightly, because Nathan would have wanted that, is that when you use gravity to protect life rather than to take it, spacetime has a different response. That sounds metaphysical. Our physicists hate saying it. But the math doesn't leave room for anything else. She paused. Space disagreed with what the Vreth fleet was doing. And when we gave it a mechanism to express that disagreement, it took it. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Celine's voice, when it came, was quieter. You're asking the Council to accept that the universe itself endorsed your actions. I'm asking the Council, Joe said, to look at what actually happened. 60,000 people are alive. The aggressors are contained without a single death. The weapon worked better than its designers predicted because the underlying physics cooperated. And the Council is being asked to condemn humanity not for an atrocity, but for a rescue, at the request of the people who started the attack. She sat down. Me was very still in the gallery. New York had her eyes closed. Day was making notes. Hai was watching the Orati delegation. Wo was watching Celine. The Council deliberated for 11 hours. The vote was not close. 193 to 24 in favor of dismissal. The Covenant's language was referred to a revision committee. The Orati Merchant Guild's supply arrangements with the Vreth Collective were flagged for formal investigation. The Vreth fleet remained in its recursive bubble, because nobody could figure out how to open it, and also because space seemed to prefer them there. Jo walked out of the chamber into the corridor where her team was waiting. Me handed her a coffee, real coffee, shipped from Earth, warm. You killed it. Nathan wrote the notes, Jo said. Nathan built the weapon, New York said. You built the argument. Day was already on a call. Hai was writing. Wo was smiling, which on Wo looked like a sunrise. Jo drank her coffee and looked out the viewport at the stars. Somewhere out there, in a 6-meter sphere of folded light, 80 warships were experiencing heat death at accelerated rates, held in place by physics that shouldn't, technically, be doing that. She thought about Nathan's voice when he'd first shown her the tidal array schematics. It's not a weapon, Jo. It's a question. We ask space to help us, and we find out if it will. Apparently, it would. She finished her coffee. Humanity had been given a warning, a review, and a bill to pay in diplomatic patience. They'd also been given something the Council hadn't intended to give them. A hint. Space wasn't neutral. Space was paying attention. And it had noticed which side humanity was on.